Ryan's eyes opened to a pale ceiling and the steady beep of the machines. For a few seconds, his body refused to move. Not from pain, from the sense that something had gone terribly wrong. 3 weeks, that's how long he'd been in a medically induced coma, they told him. A car accident, traumatic brain injury. The doctors called it a miracle. His vitals were stable, his cognition intact, his memory clear as ever. But the first crack formed when the nurse brought in mail, a thick envelope addressed to CEO Jonathan Adler, his younger brother. The company was his. He founded Adler Systems at 27, built it from a two-person startup to a multi-million-dollar cloud infrastructure provider. Jonathan, a late arrival, had always resented being the co-founder's little brother. Now suddenly, he wasn't. Now suddenly, he was the founder. Ryan asked for a company update. The nurse said Jonathan had taken over all operations. He's been great about it, she added. Got your board approval to act on your behalf. He nodded. Didn't speak. Didn't let the confusion show. He requested his laptop, quietly reset his passwords, and what he saw made his jaw clench so tight his stitches threatened to tear. In the company's internal dashboard, Jonathan had assumed full legal ownership of Adler Systems. A notarized affidavit, dated 2 days after Ryan's coma began, granted him power of attorney. It bore Ryan's name in a signature that, to the untrained eye, looked real, but Ryan had been signing contracts since he was 18. He knew his own strokes. That wasn't his art. The forged document wasn't even the worst part. The board minutes showed a vote confirming Jonathan as CEO and majority shareholder. The vote had passed 4-1, with the fifth vote listed as present by proxy Ryan Adler, signed, stamped, and sealed by a notary from Palm Beach County, Florida, a place Ryan hadn't set foot in since 2012. He sat still for a long time, then he closed the laptop. They'd grown up close, inseparable even, until their father died and Ryan took on the family business. Jonathan never wanted it. He bounced between careers, burning bridges, investing poorly. When Ryan offered him a C-suite seat at Adler Systems, it was a lifeline. Now he understood. Jonathan had been waiting. Ryan requested discharge under private care. His team of doctors resisted, but he was calm, calculating. The less he said, the more they backed down. He signed himself out under a pseudonym, checked into a rental 2 towns over, and paid in cash. He spent the first 3 nights watching board recordings, emails, Slack exports, anything his residual admin access could still retrieve. Jonathan had changed the locks, digitally and otherwise, but Ryan had written the system's back-end himself. There were cracks. Jonathan wore suits now, talked like an executive, used phrases like vision statement and leveraging synergies. He even gave interviews, all smiled lies and careful PR. My brother's unfortunate accident was a turning point, he told CNBC. It forced me to step up. Ryan muted the video before the bile reached his mouth. He wasn't just erased, he was replaced. Then came the final blow, a transaction record showing Jonathan had moved 40% of Adler Systems holdings into a newly created entity, Adler Ventures LLC, registered in Florida. That entity had then sold off intellectual property to a third shell company. On paper, it looked like nothing, but to someone with Ryan's eye, it was clear. A corporate siphon was underway. He wasn't dealing with immaturity, he was dealing with design. Jonathan had planned for this, long before the accident. Ryan closed the file, opened a secure channel, and messaged one name, Adriana Vasquez, his old cybersecurity contractor, then another, Daniel Griggs, his silent legal retainer. The war wasn't coming. It had already started. He thought I wouldn't remember. Ryan didn't go home. He didn't call friends, didn't contact his assistant, didn't even tell the hospital staff where he was going after discharge. No announcement, no social media post, just a silent exit. The kind that makes people think you're still lying in bed, dazed, fragile, and harmless. Jonathan's first assumption, his older brother was broken, mentally, physically, emotionally, maybe even grateful the company survived in his absence. That illusion would serve Ryan for now. He shaved his beard, cut his hair short, dyed it 2 shades darker. A friend in private aviation owed him a favor. A quick hop to Asheville, North Carolina. A place with no cameras, no questions, and no signal if you didn't want it. The mountain house had belonged to a former client who went underground during an SEC investigation. Remote, defensible, off-grid, exactly what he needed. The moment he landed, he powered up the laptop he'd encrypted with a military-grade partition. Inside it, everything Jonathan had underestimated. The timeline was clear. Ryan had slipped into a coma on May 17th after his brakes failed. The crash report listed accidental mechanical failure, no traces of tampering, but Ryan had personally had those brakes serviced 4 days before. That wasn't paranoia, that was procedure. because in his world you always prepared for worst-case scenarios. Jonathan had submitted the power of attorney documents on May 21st. 4 days later, not enough time to grieve. Just enough time to exploit. The notary's seal was real, but something was off. Ryan ran the stamp against Florida's notary database. The license belonged to Elise Navarro, a mobile notary specializing in real estate. Her profile listed a string of addresses she'd signed off on in Miami, Boca Raton, and Fort Lauderdale. No mention of any business in North Carolina. No reason to be near the hospital. Why would a Florida notary fly north to witness a coma patient sign over corporate control? Answer: she didn't. Ryan stayed in silence for 2 weeks. During that time, he created a false trail. Automated emails to his therapist, location pings from a burner phone in Charleston, and a backdated travel record showing a stay at a wellness retreat. Meanwhile, he contacted Adriana Vasquez through a darknet portal she once designed for whistleblowers. She responded with one line: "I knew you weren't dead." Their terms were the same as always: triple market rate, no paper trail, no names. Within 48 hours, Adriana had bypassed Adler Systems' new firewall and delivered a clean cut of Jonathan's inbox, Slack messages, and encrypted DocuSign logs. What Ryan read made his blood turn to ice. Jonathan hadn't just taken over, he'd planned it. Weeks before the accident, he'd contacted an off-the-books legal group based in the Caymans. The emails were coded, but the intent was transparent. If the opportunity arises, I need immediate transfer protocols, POA, majority control, asset freeze capacity. The reply: understood, you'll need a witness. That witness had a price, and Ryan was going to make her regret her signature. Meanwhile, Jonathan hosted a press event announcing Adler's strategic transformation into a venture-led innovation lab. In plain speak, he was liquidating assets under the cover of Vision. He grinned through every camera flash. My brother always believed in bold moves. I'm just continuing the legacy. Ryan watched the broadcast from a cracked tablet in the mountain house. He didn't speak, he didn't blink. Then he opened a folder titled Counterstrike. Inside were 2 subfolders, legal and financial. In the legal folder, he began drafting a private suit, not a public takedown yet, but a tactical challenge. Misrepresentation, unauthorized control, fraudulent notary use, breach of fiduciary duty. If filed correctly, it would trigger a 14-day freeze on any new asset movement. In the financial folder, Adriana had placed something far more dangerous: metadata proof that the forged signature was copy-pasted, not handwritten, and the same artifact had been used on 5 separate filings. That crossed into criminal. Ryan backed it up to 3 different drives, printed hard copies, sealed them in an envelope labeled, "If I'm gone again, give this to Griggs." He wasn't going to vanish, but he was going to make sure Jonathan did. He thought I wouldn't wake up. That was his first mistake. Thinking I'd stay silent, that'll be his last. Trust doesn't collapse overnight. It erodes, piece by piece, quietly. Ryan once believed that offering his younger brother a position at Adler Systems was an act of loyalty, a chance to rebuild the family legacy their father died protecting. But looking back, the signs had been there. Not loud, not criminal, just cracks. It began 6 years ago, when Jonathan defaulted on a 6-figure investment in a doomed NFT startup. Ryan covered the shortfall quietly, telling himself his brother needed to stumble once to learn. Instead, Jonathan learned something else. Ryan always cleaned up his mess. 3 years ago, Ryan caught him backdating expense reports to mask a gambling debt. Again, he cleaned it up, but not without warning. "This is your last free pass," Ryan had said, voice like glass under pressure. Jonathan nodded, promised to change. But people like Jonathan don't change. They adapt. When Ryan offered him the title of COO, it wasn't earned. It was a shield, a way to protect him from the real battlefield of competition, negotiation, shareholder warfare. Jonathan took the seat and used it to study the rules of the game, not to play fair, but to learn how to cheat properly. Ryan had spent years building Adler Systems with the same precision he used to play chess. 5 moves ahead, never emotional. He handled the capital rounds, the federal contracts, the back-end architecture. Jonathan handled optics, product names, influencer partnerships, PR fluff. Jonathan once described himself at a party as the Steve Jobs to Ryan's Wozniak. Ryan smiled then, but now the arrogance landed differently. Back in the mountain house, Ryan opened an archived Slack log from 18 months ago, a seemingly innocent message from Jonathan to the team's senior engineer. "If something ever happens to Ryan, are you clear on our contingency protocols?" The reply: "What kind of something?" Jonathan had replied with a shrug emoji. At the time, it had seemed like over-preparation. After all, Ryan was healthy, disciplined, nearly militant about routines, never drank, never drove distracted. No vulnerabilities, no weakness. So why was Jonathan preparing for him to disappear? Ryan dug deeper. Emails from his executive assistant, flagged for HR concern, never followed up on. Subject, Jonathan overstepping. Attached, an incident report. Jonathan had tried to override a vendor approval protocol during a key partnership with Homeland Cyber Defense. Ryan had denied the override without ever confronting him directly. He remembered thinking, don't escalate. Family first. That was his second mistake. Now he saw the strategy. Jonathan had used the years like a virus used time, quietly embedding itself in vital systems, mapping Ryan's patterns, testing boundaries. When Ryan hired new counsel last year to prepare Adler Systems for a possible IPO, Jonathan insisted on helping draft the prospectus. His fingerprints were all over the original language around executive continuity planning, continuity in case of death, or coma. He even pushed for language that allowed POA transfer without explicit witness verification, as long as a notary was present. Ryan had found the clause odd then, but hadn't flagged it. Jonathan had explained it away as a legal precaution for investor confidence. It was bait. Ryan took it. And when the time came, Jonathan pulled the trigger. The brakes, the accident. It didn't matter if Jonathan had planned the crash. Not yet. That truth would come later. For now, the focus was motive and means. He had both. What Ryan needed now was pattern. And one email from 5 months ago sealed it. You've always had the brains, Rye, but I'm the one people listen to. Just remember that when it's my name on the building. He had saved it, marked unread. Now he printed it, highlighted the phrase, my name on the building, slipped it into the file for Griggs under motive, ego-driven hostile takeover. Ryan stared out the cabin window, pine trees swayed under cold wind. The silence was surgical. He didn't feel rage, not yet, only precision. He copied my signature, but he forgot the one thing I never put in writing, like, I always finish what I start. Numbers are clean, they don't lie, they don't flinch, and they don't care about last names. Ryan had learned long ago that paper trails were better than memories. In the world of finance, facts weren't spoken. They were buried in decimals, embedded in statements, disguised in footnotes. His brother could rewrite narratives for the media, but not the math. He started with the quarterly financial report dated the week after his accident. Jonathan had signed it as CEO. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was a subtle line item under miscellaneous operating losses, $3.2 million listed as technology infrastructure divestment. The line didn't appear in any prior report. The supporting notes cited the sale of non-core proprietary systems to a subsidiary firm, Adler Ventures LLC, the same shell company Ryan had uncovered in Florida. The transfer price? $3.2 million. Ryan knew that valuation was laughable. The system sold, internally known as Sentinel Core, was the backbone of Adler's cybersecurity suite. Its development had cost nearly $18 million. Ryan had architected every layer. Selling it for less than a fifth of its value wasn't a business decision. It was a heist. He cross-referenced the wire transfer logs, obtained through a data extraction tool Adriana had built for corporate internal leaks. Sure enough, the recipient account of that sale was a Cayman-registered blind trust. Holder name? Redacted. Originating signer? Jonathan Adler. Next came the equity reallocation file. Buried in a DocuSign archive was a document showing a sudden 17% shift in equity from Ryan to Jonathan. The justification? Transfer via incapacitated shareholder proxy. Ryan read the file 3 times. Legally, the proxy could only act in Ryan's best interest. The equity move had no market rationale, no vote record, no valuation assessment. It was pure theft, dressed in the language of boardroom bureaucracy. But what clinched it wasn't the move. It was the timestamp. The document was signed at 3:41 a.m. on May 22nd, exactly 72 hours after Ryan's surgery and before his sedation had even been lifted. The digital certificate claimed it was signed in presence of medical staff. Ryan checked his hospital records. No staff logged in his room that night. No visitation approval, no witness. That meant the signature was the only thing authorizing it. A signature Ryan never gave. And that meant the entire equity shift was criminal, not just unethical. To support his legal assault, Ryan needed forensic backing. He contacted Derek Lynn, a forensic CPA known for dismantling shell structures used in hedge fund fraud. No questions asked as long as the retainer cleared. Within 48 hours, Derek sent back a preliminary report with 4 flagged findings: irregular asset movement between Adler Systems and 2 shell companies within 14 days of the coma, a false valuation certificate generated from a shadow valuation firm that Jonathan set up using an intern's name as director, A manipulated profit and loss statement used to justify the asset dump, a ghost payroll, 3 employees drawing salaries but with no login records, no project assignments, and identical SSN sequences. Each anomaly was a thread. Pull them together and they unraveled the lie Jonathan had built. The final clue came from a harmless-looking Venmo payment. Jonathan had sent $4,500 to a woman labeled only as EN be consult 2 weeks before the POA documents were submitted. EN, Elise Navarro, the notary. The description said, for the extra visit. That payment wasn't in the company books. It came from Jonathan's personal account, a slip, and one Ryan had captured, timestamped, and printed. He now had what lawyers call a pattern of conduct. He had motive, he had action, he had deception, he had numbers. In the war room Ryan built inside the cabin, he pinned a headline on the corkboard, Coma survivor accuses brother of corporate coup. It hadn't been written yet, but it would be. Then he opened a fresh manila folder labeled Signatures, Level 1 Forensics. Time to bring in a handwriting assassin. Jonathan thought the cameras made him safe, but the numbers were always watching. Handwriting is like DNA. You can mimic it, even get close, but you can't fake the microtremors of a muscle under stress. You can't forge hesitation. Ryan knew this. More importantly, Emery Beck knew it better. Beck wasn't just a forensic handwriting analyst. He was the Department of Justice's former go-to when mobsters tried to sign away their guilt posthumously. Retired, bitter, and exacting, he lived in a secured house in Arizona with a vendetta against electronic signatures. Ryan flew him in under the name Alan Bryce and handed him a single sheet of paper, the POA that gave Jonathan control. Beck didn't speak for 2 full minutes. Then, this is a scan overlay. It's see, the R is lifted, no natural pressure, digitally pasted, amateur work. He requested the original copy. Ryan had already secured a certified PDF from the notary archive and an internal printout used in Adler's board vote. Beck got to work. By the end of day 2, he had identified 12 inconsistencies. Pen pressure missing in curvature. Stroke delay in 2 key letters, as if resized. Impossibility of angle from a hospital bed. Inconsistent vector slope, not written, rendered. He wrote a 1-page expert affidavit concluding, not only is the signature not authentic, it shows characteristics consistent with layered digital insertion, likely via software like PDF Chef or Signwell. It is not a forgery by hand, it is digital identity fraud. That single sentence was a tactical nuclear weapon. Ryan scanned the affidavit, encrypted it, and labeled the file, Beckproof v1.pdf. Sent copies to Griggs and Adriana with a single instruction, hold until I say detonate. Now it was Adriana's turn. While Beck cracked pen strokes, she cracked keystrokes, specifically Jonathan's corporate login. The credentials themselves were no longer valid, but cached cookies from a third-party collaboration tool left fingerprints. She launched a brute force decryption attack on a forgotten cloud backup folder Jonathan had uploaded before tightening Adler's network security. After 96 hours, the folder opened, boomed, revealing nearly 6 gigabytes of raw emails, call recordings, draft documents, and, most damning, screen recordings. Ryan watched one clip in silence. It showed Jonathan, 6 days after Ryan's accident, rehearsing a Zoom call with the board. Just follow the script. The POA's in place. He doesn't need to be awake. Legally, we just need the document. I've got the notary locked in. Don't overthink it. Another voice responded, and if he wakes up? Jonathan smiled. He'll thank me for keeping the company alive, or he won't be in shape to do anything at all. That file, Ryan labeled Kingmaker.rehearsal MP4, there would be no negotiation now. No family reckoning, just evidence and consequences. Adriana delivered 2 more finds, a password manager export showing logins Jonathan used to access Ryan's private cloud vault, an explicit violation of federal computer fraud laws, a fake timestamp utility used to alter metadata on internal docs, usually only seen in cyber fraud schemes. She also tracked down an internal Slack message Jonathan sent the day after the forged POA went through. Make sure legal uploads all new filings to the public folder. Griggs is a ghost now. Everything routes through me. Ryan smiled. Griggs wasn't a ghost. He was very real and about to file 3 motions: fraudulent conveyance, unauthorized execution of power of attorney, digital identity theft under federal wire fraud statutes. Each motion was backed not just by documents, but digital footprints, clicks, logins, even keystroke logs. Before he left the cabin that night, Ryan printed 3 items: Beck's affidavit, a screenshot of the Slack message. The first still from the screen recording where Jonathan smirks at the camera, he pinned them on the war room wall under the headline, Intent, Means, Execution. Then he wrote 3 words beneath them in permanent black ink. I remember everything. He forged a signature. I cracked his code. Time to take my company back. Bite by bite. Jonathan had made one mistake that Ryan never expected. Arrogance. Hiding money is one thing. Hiding it in Florida under a shell company with his own last name was something else entirely. Sloppy, but more than that, sentimental. Jonathan couldn't help himself. He wanted to steal everything, but he also wanted the credit. That made him traceable. Adler Ventures LLC was incorporated in Broward County, Florida, 2 weeks before Ryan's accident. The listed address? A bland UPS store mailbox in a strip mall between a vape shop and a bankrupt tax service. Ryan stood outside that building now, beneath a peeling awning in the heavy humidity, watching the clerk through the glass window. He hadn't come alone. Maria Quinlan, a corporate investigator and former IRS field agent, stood beside him. She'd built careers and ended them based on PO boxes and transaction flow. Ryan had hired her through a shell retainer company 2 years ago for a different purpose, but now she was on the real hunt. She handed him the intake report. Adler Ventures registered under a single manager entity, Glimmerkey Holdings LLC. That one's a Delaware ghost firm, untraceable on surface, but there's a hiccup. Glimmerkey's registration listed a phone number used in 3 other filings, all tied to a man named Colin Foster. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Who's Foster? Freelance fixer. Works as a corporate midwife here. Helps give birth to dirty companies. Paperwork, signatures, and if necessary, notarizations. There it was, a link to Elise Navarro. Ryan didn't go to Navarro directly, not yet. Instead, he followed Foster. Maria pulled his flight records. Colin had flown from Fort Lauderdale to Charlotte on May the 20th, checked into a hotel 12 miles from the hospital where Ryan was comatose, checked out 36 hours later, then nothing. Ryan checked security footage from the hospital that week, accessed through Adriana's private channel. He scrubbed until 3:22 a.m. on May 22nd. There, a man in a dark coat walking into the building through a back staff entrance. No visitor badge, carrying a messenger bag, face partially covered. He entered the elevator alone. 2 minutes later, a woman followed. Hispanic, early 40s, hair tied back, holding a clipboard. She wore scrubs, but didn't appear on any staff log. Ryan froze the frame. It was Elise Navarro. With photographic evidence in hand, Ryan contacted a state-level legal liaison in Florida, someone Griggs had used for hostile board actions in the past. Quietly, they filed a subpoena for Navarro's notarization logs. Florida law required notaries to keep a written journal for every signing. Time, location, form of ID used, witness presence. The record for May 21st, Ryan Adler. POA form, witnessed in person, license presented, signed at 3 p.m. Lie. Ryan had been under sedations, unable to speak, let alone sign. He now had documentary fraud committed by a licensed notary. That meant Navarro was legally exposed and vulnerable. Ryan and Maria flew to Miami. Navarro was still working, now at a small mortgage signing firm, her name nowhere on the public site. They waited for her in the parking lot after a Tuesday signing. When she saw Ryan, she dropped her keys. You're supposed to be, she started. Unconscious, Ryan said. I got better. She tried to deny involvement at first, claimed Colin forged her entry, claimed Jonathan handled everything, but Ryan gave her a choice, testify and walk away, stay quiet and become the face of federal POA fraud. Navarro cracked. She confessed everything. On tape, notarized by a third-party officer present with Griggs, she named Colin Foster, she named Jonathan, she described the meeting in the hospital hallway, the fake ID Jonathan gave her, the hush payment through Venmo disguised as consulting. Then she said something else. He wasn't just trying to take the company. He thought you wouldn't make it. Ryan looked her in the eyes. He almost got it right. Ryan added a new folder to his archive. Navarro's statement MP3. Attached to it, her sworn affidavit. She was a ghost. Now she was a witness, a ghost company, a ghost notary, a ghost signature. And now they're all visible, no more hiding. Ryan had always believed betrayal came in sharp edges, a knife in the back, a lie to your face. He never expected it to come in a dress and a designer heels, stepping out of a black SUV in front of Adler Systems headquarters. Madeline Shaw, his ex, a former marketing VP turned tech brand consultant, brilliant, tactical, unsentimental. She and Ryan had ended things clean, or so he thought, 2 years before his accident. The last time they spoke, she was starting her own firm in San Diego, Now, she was standing beside Jonathan at a shareholders event, smiling like she'd always been there. Ryan watched the live stream from a secure feed. Jonathan wrapped an arm around her waist, proudly introduced her as the new head of strategic partnerships. Her reply was practiced, but real enough to sting. It's an honor to help Jonathan take Adler into the future. The crowd clapped. Ryan stared, unmoving. This wasn't romantic, it was strategic. Madeline had a genius for optics. Her presence validated Jonathan's story, the narrative of a grieving brother stepping up, with trusted allies by his side. Ryan knew her well enough to see through it. She wasn't there for love. She was there for access. And access could be flipped. 2 days later, Ryan sent her a message. Encrypted, no signature, just a phrase only she would recognize. Level 6 still has cameras, and I still know the password. Level 6 had been their private floor when they ran Adler together. A space for late-night brainstorms, quiet arguments, and, occasionally, something less professional. There were no official cameras up there, but they had installed one. Secretly, after a break-in scare, she had chosen the password. He remembered it. That message wasn't a threat, it was a reminder. I remember everything. Including you, she responded 4 hours later. You shouldn't be alive, but you are. Meet me tomorrow, no phones. The diner was empty, neutral ground. Madeline slid into the booth, ordered black coffee, and stared at him like he was a ghost that owed her money. You look different, she said. Comas do that, he replied. She didn't ask about the accident. He didn't offer. They danced around it for a minute. Then, why Jonathan? He needed help, she said. And I wanted back in. You pushed me out, remember? That part was true. After their breakup, Ryan had locked down the executive access chain, cutting her from the inside. It had been business, not vengeance, but it still hurt. So this is revenge? He asked. No, she said. It's redemption. She claimed she didn't know about the forged POA, that Jonathan told her Ryan had pre-approved the emergency transition, but she knew now. Navarro's confession had leaked through legal circles. She wasn't stupid. So what now? She asked. You help me, Ryan said, and I erase your name from this mess. She blinked. He could see the calculations running behind her eyes. I want immunity, she said. You'll get it. You testify under sealed affidavit, then disappear until I call you. And Jonathan? He won't see you coming. 3 days later, Madeline delivered. She sent Ryan a flash drive labeled Project Echo. It contained archived Zoom calls, exported Slack chats, and, most valuable, a master password. Jonathan had reused it across platforms. It was the same one she'd set up for him when they first started collaborating on Adler's rebranding. Ryan fed the credential to Adriana. Within hours, she breached an encrypted drive Jonathan kept off the Adler network. Inside were legal memos, call logs with Cayman Council, draft letters to dissolve Adler Systems post-acquisition, and a spreadsheet. One column labeled Post-Mortem Control Plan. Rows outlined, liquidate Sentinel Core Fire non-loyal board members, convert assets to Glimmerkey, replace Ryan Impress narrative, offer Madeline equity for silence. It was all there. Ryan smiled. This wasn't just about regaining ownership anymore, it was about proving intent to erase. That night, Madeline sent one last message. He's planning something big, he's nervous, he thinks Navarro might fold. She already did. Then he's about to make a mistake. Ryan replied, good, I need one more. He opened a new file, Shell Collapse Evidence Chain. X as Celeste X, every lie had a record, and now so did Jonathan. He thought she was leverage, but she was the vault, and now the key is mine. There are moments in warfare when nothing moves, just the long inhale before the detonation. Ryan stood at the edge of that moment now, silent, ready. The legal motions had been prepared with brutal precision. Griggs filed them in rapid sequence across 2 jurisdictions. Florida, where Adler Ventures LLC was registered, and Delaware, where Adler Systems was incorporated. Both filings carried a single demand, immediate temporary restraining order on all asset transfers and corporate governance activity pending review of fraudulent control documents. Attached, Beck's forensic affidavit on the forged signature, Navarro's notarized confession, screen recordings from Jonathan rehearsing lies, IP metadata logs from unauthorized logins, a detailed flowchart titled Control Fraud Scheme, Adler Family. The motions hit just before market open on a Monday morning. By noon, Adler Systems banking accounts were locked, all outgoing wires suspended, payroll paused, vendor transfers stopped, even the coffee fund froze. Jonathan received the first call at 12:43 p.m. Legal. Panicked. We've been served. You're accused of corporate identity theft. We have 72 hours to respond or you lose de facto control. Then came the investor calls, then board counsel, then Madeline, who played her part perfectly. "I don't know what this is," she told him, "but you need to fix it. Fast." He stared at her like she was slipping through his hands. "This is Ryan," he said, his voice low. "He's behind this." "You said he couldn't fight back," she replied coldly. "He shouldn't be able to." Jonathan spent the next hour calling his Cayman attorney, his fixer Colin Foster, and even, in a moment of desperation, the notary, Elise Navarro. She didn't pick up. She never would again. Her number had been disconnected. Her affidavit was already in the DOJ evidence database. Meanwhile, Ryan watched the collapse unfold from a quiet hotel in DC, not the cabin, not the woods. He'd moved closer to the courtroom now, to the battlefield. Adriana updated him every 90 minutes. He tried to access the Glimmerkey accounts, rejected. Tried to authorize a board vote to restructure, system blocked. Fired 3 executives. The terminations didn't process, which flagged the override. Jonathan was trying to reassert control, but the machine no longer obeyed him. The accounts knew something he didn't. He was no longer the CEO. Technically, Ryan hadn't reclaimed the title yet, but the injunction meant no one could act without neutral oversight. That, in corporate warfare, was the same as cutting the head off the snake. At 5:02 p.m., Jonathan made a public statement. "This is a temporary legal dispute fueled by confusion over medical circumstances and internal miscommunication. Adler Systems remain stable and visionary under my leadership." Ryan muted the clip halfway through. He didn't care about the speech. He cared about the tremor in Jonathan's voice, the way his hand twitched when he said confusion, the way his eyes darted to someone off camera when asked about the POA. That wasn't leadership. That was someone who heard footsteps behind him. By Tuesday morning, Ryan received confirmation from Griggs. Freezing order is sustained. Florida court upheld the motion. Cayman banks have been notified. Any attempt to move funds will trigger contempt. Jonathan now had no control, no cash flow, no fallback. He tried calling Madeline again that night. She answered. Let him speak for 11 seconds. "If you're calling to beg, try someone who didn't watch you bury your brother." Click. She turned off her phone, sent Ryan a 2-word text. "He's drowning." Ryan opened a new file in his encrypted vault. Phase 2, criminal leverage. Inside it, a checklist. 1 word per line. Forensics notary, signature chain, public lie, shell trace asset freeze board fracture. Next phase, divide the inner circle. Isolate Jonathan completely, force him to panic. But first, Ryan took a moment to stare at the quiet dashboard on his screen. The Adler Systems master account, untouched, unmovable, frozen in time, just like he had been. He took my voice. I took his access. Now we'll see who really built this empire. There's no adrenaline in corporate warfare, no raised voices, no overturned desks, just the cold hum of fluorescent lights, the rustle of paper, and the dull ring of court-appointed clocks measuring lives in billable hours. Ryan entered the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., wearing a charcoal suit and no tie. His presence was deliberate. Not announced, not filmed, not flanked by PR handlers. But the moment he stepped inside that courtroom, everything changed. For the first time since the accident, Jonathan saw him in the flesh. Not a ghost, not a whisper of a memory. Alive, walking, focused. Jonathan's eyes widened. The expression was unmistakable. He survived. Ryan didn't blink. He took his seat at the plaintiff's table, stacked files neatly in front of him, and waited as the clerk began. Adler versus Adler. Civil action 49285. Motion to vacate power of attorney. Motion to reverse corporate control assignment. Motion to enjoin financial manipulation under 18 U.S. Code SARVO 1343. Wire fraud. The courtroom was silent except for the echo of those final words, wire fraud. That changed the tone. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was the beginning of something criminal. Jonathan's legal team, 4 men in tailored suits, top-tier reputations, opened with predictable theatre. Ryan's accident created ambiguity. Emergency action was taken to preserve the business. Jonathan acted under advisement. It was noise. Then Ryan's team began. Griggs spoke first. His tone was neutral, surgical. He presented a timeline of actions taken during Ryan's medically induced coma. Forged power of attorney document, notarization by a fraudulent witness, transfer of proprietary assets at undervalued rates, creation of shell companies in Florida and the Caymans, unauthorized access to private credentials, attempted dissolution of the board. He didn't need to dramatize. The paperwork told the story. Then came the exhibits. Exhibit A, Beck's forensic analysis of the signature, disproving any physical authenticity. Exhibit B, Navarro's affidavit and audio confession. Exhibit C, the screen recording of Jonathan rehearsing the board vote deception. Exhibit D, the Zoom logs and metadata of when and how access was stolen. Exhibit E, Madeline Shaw's signed, notarized affidavit confirming Jonathan's intent, not just action. Jonathan shifted in his seat. Sweat formed just beneath the collar. He wasn't facing Ryan the brother anymore. He was facing Ryan the tactician. The judge, a hard-eyed woman with 20 years on the federal bench, paused after reviewing the exhibits. This isn't a disagreement over business direction. This is structured corporate fraud, and if half of this holds under evidentiary review, the matter may extend into criminal proceedings. Jonathan's attorneys tried to deflect, claimed mental ambiguity, shock from the accident, miscommunication. They even submitted a sealed psychiatric memo, suggesting Ryan might be emotionally compromised. Ryan leaned forward. "I'm not here to explain my feelings," he said quietly. "I'm here to reclaim what's mine." Then he handed over the recovery plan, a full operations manual he wrote from the cabin, 37 pages long, containing financial reconstruction, technical reintegration, and a timeline to restore full shareholder alignment within 90 days. The judge raised an eyebrow. "This was authored by you?" "Yes, Your Honor." "While recovering from a coma?" "Correct. While watching my brother dismantle my company." There was no reply to that. Even Jonathan sat still. The hearing ended with the judge granting a preliminary injunction. Jonathan was barred from all executive decision-making. Adler Systems was to be overseen by an independent court-appointed receiver. No assets could be transferred, sold, or repurposed. All prior POA authority was vacated, effective immediately. In less than 2 hours, Jonathan lost control. Legally, publicly, permanently. But Ryan wasn't done. He approached Jonathan as they exited the courthouse. Quiet, no cameras, just one final exchange. "It didn't have to be war," Jonathan said. "You chose war the second you signed my name. I was trying to save the company." "No," Ryan said. "You were trying to become me, but here I am." He walked away before Jonathan could answer. That night, Griggs received a sealed envelope. Inside, a whistleblower report filed anonymously to the SEC. It documented suspicious insider transfers at Adler Systems during Ryan's coma, all linked to Jonathan. Attached was a note in Ryan's handwriting. "Civil victory is just a start. Let's make it federal." The courtroom wasn't the endgame. It was the opening salvo. He wanted the company. Now he'll fight for his freedom instead. When Elise Navarro stepped onto the witness stand, she didn't look like a fraudster. She looked like a woman cornered. Simple blouse, no jewelry, eyes hollow from weeks of fear. But her voice, when it came, was steady, controlled. "On May 21st, I was paid to witness a signature," she began. "Did you witness Ryan Adler sign the power of attorney document in question?" "No." "Was he present?" "No." "Did you confirm his identity through state-issued ID?" "No, I was handed a photocopy." The courtroom was still. "Who gave you the document and the copy of the ID?" "Jonathan Adler." A gasp rippled through the back row. She continued, voice measured like she had practiced it 1,000 times. "He said it was urgent, that his brother was unconscious but had verbally agreed to the terms. He showed me hospital paperwork. Fake, I think now. He paid me $4,500 in cash and a Venmo labeled consulting. He told me I'd never hear about it again." The judge leaned forward. "Did you knowingly file a false notarial act?" "Yes." "Did you understand the document was intended to transfer control of a multi-million-dollar company?" "Not at the time." "I do now." Then she dropped the final nail. "He told me, don't worry, Ryan's not waking up. This is just paperwork." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Navarro's confession had turned what started as a civil dispute into a criminal storm. Within hours, the Department of Justice announced it would open a formal investigation into corporate identity fraud and electronic forgery under federal wire fraud statutes. Jonathan's legal team filed a motion to suppress the testimony. It was denied. Navarro was granted limited use immunity in exchange for her full cooperation. The terms of the deal were simple: full admission, all communication records, disclosure of accomplices, no further notarial work for 20 years. Ryan didn't gloat, he didn't show, he didn't need to. He'd already played the move weeks ago, the second he captured Navarro on tape in that Miami parking lot. The public testimony was just the final stroke, the brush across the signature line, the line Jonathan had once forged without hesitation. At Adler Systems, fallout spread like fire through dry grass. The board, now under temporary receivership, began internal audits. Madeline, still operating as a protected witness, fed Ryan everything. Internal memos discussing controlled PR deflection, private Slack messages between executives mocking the Coma myth, legal memos preparing for contingency exit scenarios. if Jonathan was removed. He wasn't just being ejected, he was being abandoned. Then came the next blow. FBI agents visited Jonathan's condo in Arlington. Not a raid, not yet. Just a quiet knock and a stack of subpoenas, search warrants for digital records, device seizures, financial disclosures, Cayman account inquiries. Ryan received a report from Griggs later that night. They're not just interested in Adler anymore, Griggs said. They're looking at Navarro? Ryan asked. Wider, the shell firms, the off-book legal teams, the Cayman bank activity. This may cross into racketeering if Foster shows up again. That was the long game. Ryan had no interest in prison vengeance. He wanted exposure, public, legal, permanent. Let the system that Jonathan manipulated slowly dismantle him in return. And it was working. The media latched onto a new phrase, the signature she forged, a brother's betrayal, $1 billion fraud. Mainstream headlines erupted across networks, podcasts dissected the timeline, legal panels replayed Navarro's statement in slow motion. Jonathan's name was now synonymous with synthetic succession. No investor would trust him again. At his DC hotel, Ryan sat alone, reading every word of Navarro's sworn testimony. Her handwriting was careful, her name at the bottom, real. Ironically, hers was the only signature in the entire scandal that was legally binding. He printed it, pinned it beside Jonathan's forgery on the war room wall. One document stolen, the other surrendered. Then he drew a thick red line between them, the past and the consequence, cause and collapse. He forged my name with confidence, but hers will be what buries him. Ryan never expected justice to arrive like this, not in a courtroom, not through lawyers, but with Navarro's confession public and the injunction upheld, the cracks had become fractures. What was once corporate betrayal was now premeditated destruction. And the final truth, the most damning one, was buried not in documents, but in toxicology reports. Griggs called late that evening. I've got something, you're going to want to sit down. Ryan didn't, he just listened. 3 weeks earlier, Adriana had submitted a quiet request through a third-party medical research firm. The objective, reanalyze Ryan's blood work from the night of the accident, not for alcohol, not for narcotics, for synthetics. The results came back. Trace quantities of butyryl fentanyl, a synthetic opioid nearly 30 times stronger than morphine, often missed in standard hospital scans, combined with a low-dose benzodiazepine compound. Translation, sedation, engineered. The dosage was enough to induce unconsciousness, but timed carefully to look like trauma-related complications post-crash. The accident? Real. The crash? Engineered. The coma? Helped along. Jonathan hadn't just exploited a tragedy, he manufactured it. Ryan requested full hospital security footage, again, scrubbed minute by minute. Then, on the second night, he found it. 3:06 a.m., May 18th. A man in a dark hoodie entered Ryan's room. Hospital staff changeover window, no ID badge. The figure moved to the IV stand, made a subtle adjustment, then exited. A freeze frame revealed enough, partial profile, tattoo near the wrist, a half-finished compass. Ryan remembered it. The man had once worked for Jonathan's logistics team. Dismissed for behavioral volatility. His name, Carter Voss. Ryan handed the video to Griggs. Can we tie Voss to anything in the medical chain? No need. We'll tie him to Jonathan. Adriana unearthed 3 cash transfers. $8,000 to Voss 2 days before the crash, $2,000 to a burner phone registered to his alias, and a final $10,000 cash withdrawal by Jonathan the day after Ryan went under. The funds weren't from Adler Systems. They came from Glimmerkey Holdings LLC. Now the shell company wasn't just a financial weapon, it was the funding arm of a chemical hit. Madeline confirmed the worst. Jonathan told me he didn't think you'd wake up, that it would be easier. Easier how? No questions, no succession fight. He said people would remember you fondly, that they'd trust him more. He hadn't just had stolen the company, he had tried to write the ending of Ryan's story. Ryan didn't blink, didn't rage, he simply opened a new folder in his war archive. Murder intent chain, Voss footage, synthetic blood report, Glimmerkey wire logs, timeline of dosage exposure versus crash trauma. It's just Madeline's written testimony, he printed 1 copy. Delivered it directly to the DOJ office in DC. No lawyer, no press, just a sealed file. Case escalation request, attempted homicide via medical interference. The DOJ opened an investigation within 24 hours. FBI surveillance placed Voss under observation. They didn't approach. Not yet. But his behavior changed immediately. New burner phone, sudden request for offshore travel visa, movement patterns erratic. He was running. Jonathan didn't know yet. But Ryan did. He stood at the edge of the Potomac River that evening. No cameras, no staff, just silence. He remembered the last words his father ever said to him before dying of a heart attack in the Adler Systems launch year. Legacies aren't inherited, they're defended. Ryan had always interpreted that as building something of value. Now he understood. It wasn't just about construction, it was about protecting it from the ones closest to you. Back at his suite, Ryan updated his wall. He pulled down the forged POA, removed Navarro's signature, took off Madeline's timeline, and placed a new headline at the center. He tried to erase me. Beneath it, he pinned the toxicology report. No more boardrooms, no more contracts, no more lies. The mask's off now. This isn't about control anymore, it's about survival. Ryan knew there was one rule in war more absolute than any other: you don't fight alone. Jonathan had used people as pawns, disposable, replaceable, but pawns remember, and some, when cornered, become queens. Madeline Shaw had crossed the line. Once Jonathan's public partner, now his quiet executioner. Not out of remorse, Ryan knew better, but because she saw the ground crumbling beneath her feet. Survival sharpens loyalty. She didn't offer help this time, she delivered it. It started with a black envelope delivered to Ryan's suite by private courier. No label. Inside, a flash drive, a burner phone, and a single line written in Madeline's unmistakable cursive. He talks in his sleep. I record everything. Ryan locked the suite, shut the blinds, and loaded the drive. The folder's name, Underwater, Our 27 Nights, contained within 14 audio recordings, 6 video files, all captured in Jonathan's penthouse over the past 2 months. Madeline had wired the bedroom, the study, and even the sauna. Where he thought clearly, she noted dryly in a footnote. Ryan hit play. They don't get it, Maddie. He was weak. He always needed order, process. I gave the company its soul. And Ryan? He was a placeholder, a builder, not a leader. I did what he wouldn't, made the hard decisions. He never had the spine. Like the POA? Laughs. He signed it, or someone did, same outcome. The second clip was worse. Voss said he hesitated. I told him, give the dose or don't bother calling me again. You're not worried he'll talk? He's a ghost. You don't interrogate ghosts. Ryan stopped the playback, not out of shock, but out of strategy. He had everything now. Self-incrimination, motive, premeditated deception, confirmation of drugging, confidence in impunity, and all of it captured in Jonathan's own voice, relaxed, bragging, unfiltered. He picked up the burner phone, one contact saved, Griggs, direct. He pressed dial. Griggs, it's Ryan. What do you have? The checkmate. They met in a sealed conference room 2 hours later. Present, DOJ liaison, forensic audio analyst, and an FBI field agent. Griggs presented the clips in sequence, adding commentary between each. Timestamps, context, background noise, verification, and voice print analysis results. After the third tape, the FBI agent leaned back. This goes beyond wire fraud. We're looking at conspiracy to commit medical harm, financial manipulation, and potentially attempted murder. By the sixth clip, the DOJ rep paused the playback. Mr. Adler, if these files are verified and admissible, your brother's exposure isn't just criminal, it's federal, life-altering. I know, Ryan replied. Do you want to push this? All the way. Meanwhile, Jonathan had no idea. He was busy prepping a press appearance and scrambling for investor confidence and holding emergency meetings with attorneys. But internally, things were fracturing. 2 board members filed to temporarily suspend his shares pending ethics review. One quietly stepped down. Vendors paused contracts. The DC office removed his nameplate. And Madeline? She vanished. Her number disconnected. Social media wiped. Her consulting firm acquired by a private equity firm. One Ryan quietly funded under an alias. She was gone, but not erased, just protected. The final piece came in an email. To Ryan A. Subject, leverage/use, carefully attachments. Adler dissolution, draft PDF. Ryan obituary, press, prep.rtx. Legal clean version 6 final, PPTX. They were Jonathan's contingency documents. Prepared months in advance, plans for media narratives in case Ryan didn't survive. Talking points, financial resets, even a prepared obituary, drafted and ready for distribution. He had buried Ryan before the machines even cooled. Ryan printed one line from the obituary and pinned it to the war room wall. Ryan Adler was a visionary builder, taken too soon during a tragic accident. Then he took a red pen and wrote beneath it, not yet. He planned my death like a product launch, but I didn't expire. I evolved, and now he's trapped inside the system he built to erase me. The courtroom was colder than Ryan remembered, not by temperature, by presence. The kind of chill that settles over a place when the truth is no longer abstract, but imminent. This wasn't a civil hearing, it wasn't a strategy session, it was federal, United States vs. Jonathan Adler. Charges: fraudulent acquisition of corporate control, forgery and identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit medical assault, attempted homicide. The courtroom overflowed. Reporters filled every seat, shareholders lined the rear wall. Former Adler Systems employees sat in silence, watching the man they once called CEO squirm under the weight of his own creation. Ryan sat at the witness table, still, centered, not vindictive, not triumphant, just ready. The prosecution began with structure. First, the documents, Navarro's testimony, Beck's forensic breakdown, the digital footprints, the bank transfers. Then came the recordings. Jonathan's own voice laughing about ghosting the brother, mocking the system, describing synthetic dosing like he was ordering takeout. The jury barely blinked. The impact had settled in hours ago, but everything shifted when Ryan took the stand. The courtroom locked in. The prosecutor opened gently. "Mr. Adler, in your words, what happened? He stole my company, but that wasn't the worst of it." "What was?" "He tried to write my ending, to make it look like I'd handed everything over and never wake up to question it." "Did you?" "No," Ryan said. "I remembered everything." Then came cross-examination. Jonathan's defense attorney, young, tactical, overconfident, attempted a redirect. He leaned into the coma. "Mr. Adler, you suffered a traumatic brain injury, yes?" "Yes." "And you were unconscious for nearly 3 weeks?" "Correct." "So how can the court trust your memory of events surrounding the power of attorney filing?" Ryan stared at him, then reached under the table. He pulled out a binder, 37 pages, labeled Asset Recovery Plan, drafted during recovery. Because while I was supposed to be healing, I was mapping out exactly how he did it. Every number, every document, every lie. The prosecutor moved to admit the binder into evidence. The judge allowed it. Then came the final blow. "Mr. Adler," the prosecutor asked, "what do you want from this trial?" "Not money," Ryan said. "Not revenge. Justice, and for the record to show I didn't go quietly." He stepped down without fanfare, returned to his seat. The room exhaled. Jonathan never took the stand. He couldn't. The defense team tried to paint him as desperate, overwhelmed, emotionally reactive, but the timeline was airtight, the evidence relentless. His voice, in audio, in email, in legal drafts, betrayed him at every turn. By the end of the week, the courtroom felt like a formality. The jury returned after just 6 hours of deliberation. Guilty, on all counts. Sentencing was scheduled, federal custody pending, Jonathan's bond was revoked. As marshals led him away, he turned, not to the judge, not to the press, but to Ryan. "You weren't supposed to wake up," he said. Ryan didn't move, didn't blink. "You weren't supposed to exist without me." Ryan leaned forward just enough for only him to hear. "I don't. I exist because of you now." Jonathan looked away, and that was the last time they saw each other. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed, but Ryan walked past them all. No statement, no smile, just a quiet exit, same as the one he made after the coma. He didn't need the spotlight. The truth was now permanent, public, and lethal. Griggs later called the case one of the cleanest tactical takedowns of a white-collar offender in a decade. The DOJ issued internal commendations. Madeleine's testimony, sealed under protected witness provisions, ensured her permanent separation from the case. Navarro was relocated. Adriana wiped her trace. Maria returned to private consulting. And Ryan? He filed to reclaim full ownership of Adler Systems under court order. No objection was raised. That night, he opened the war room one last time, took down the photos, the printouts, the red string, all of it. He kept one document, framed it. Final judgment, case 275D, United States vs. Jonathan Adler. Signed, stamped, sealed. He forged a future with my name on it, but I took the pen back. And I wrote the ending myself. Prison doesn't begin with steel bars. It begins with silence. Jonathan Adler sat in a holding cell beneath the courthouse, eyes fixed on the concrete wall. No phone. No lawyer, no mirrors, just fluorescent lights that never dimmed, and a mind racing with replays he couldn't stop. He thought of Voss, gone. Off-grid, no protection. He thought of Madeleine, vanished, her betrayal complete. He thought of Navarro, testifying in a calm, precise tone while his future shattered. But mostly, he thought of Ryan, still alive, still walking, still winning. The collapse wasn't cinematic, it was clinical. Within 48 hours of the verdict, Adler Systems formally removed Jonathan from all records. The board, now under Ryan's steady hand, voted unanimously to erase all executive mentions of Jonathan from archives, media kits, bios, and presentations. Every document signed under his fraudulent control was flagged, reversed, or scrubbed. Shareholder value rebounded within the week, clients returned, vendors re-engaged. The market had a short memory, especially when the man it once feared now wore a jumpsuit and a tracking number. Jonathan's assets were seized, his Cayman accounts frozen under federal asset forfeiture. Glimmerkey Holdings collapsed into audit hell. Foster's name surfaced and then vanished. A warrant was issued. No one ever found him. The press circled like vultures at a feast. From visionary to villain, the rise and ruin of Jonathan Adler. Corporate coup gone wrong, brother betrayed by his own blood. The Coma case that changed white-collar crime forever. Even tabloids ran with it. One headline simply read, "He signed his brother's death and lost his life in return." Every interview Jonathan had ever given was replayed, dissected, mocked. His TEDx talk, once a celebrated piece on navigating crisis through leadership, now trended under satire. Investors sued, former partners distanced. Even his old college revoked a speaking engagement plaque he once donated. His name, once poised for legacy, became a warning label. Ryan didn't attend the sentencing. He didn't need to. From a distance, he read the final court summary. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 22 years in federal custody with no eligibility for parole until year 17. A lifetime ban from executive practice in any fiduciary capacity. $14.6 million in restitution. The courtroom transcript captured one final moment. The judge asked Jonathan if he had any words before sentencing. He paused. He wasn't supposed to win. No apology, no acceptance, just the empty logic of a man who thought chess was won through theft. Meanwhile, Ryan moved swiftly. He reinstated a clean executive team, promoted from within, restored the core mission of Adler Systems. Under NDA, he approved a multi-phase rebuild of Sentinel Core, this time with a proprietary watermark protocol that no one could duplicate. And he changed one thing permanently. Every signature on every contract would require 2 biometric confirmations, one physical, one retinal. He was never going to let his name be used again without his knowledge, not even once. In private, Ryan took one final call from the DOJ. "We're closing the case," the agent said. "The system held." "No," Ryan replied, it bent, but I held it together." The agent laughed. "You planning to speak about it? Write a book?" "No, I'm planning to move forward. You're one of the few who could survive something like this." "I didn't survive it," Ryan said. "I dismantled it." That night, in the now empty war room, Ryan stood alone. No evidence board, no headlines, no red string, just one final act of closure. He lit a match, burned the original forged power of attorney document, the one Beck had marked in red ink. As the paper curled and blackened, he whispered one final line. "You thought I wouldn't wake up. You thought I wouldn't remember, but you forgot what I do best." He crushed the ashes, walked away. No applause, no revenge speech, just resolution. He didn't just lose the company. He lost the illusion that he was ever strong enough to own it. That's the collapse. Not public, not loud, just absolute. Revenge doesn't end with applause, it ends with silence. A silence earned, not chosen. 6 months after the trial, Ryan Adler stood inside Adler Systems' new headquarters. Sleek, minimal, redesigned from the ground up. No photographs, no framed awards, just glass, steel, and the pulse of forward motion. The company was stable, profitable, trusted again, but Ryan hadn't returned to it in the old way. He didn't take back the CEO title. He named Lena Corbin, a former rival, as acting chief. Sharp, honest, unbuyable. He handed her the reins with one line. "Protect it like I built it, not like I bled for it." His name remained on the founding charter, but nowhere else. Not on press releases, not on front doors, not even on business cards. That wasn't modesty, it was clarity. He kept his team small. Griggs still handled legal oversight. Adriana worked remotely, managing cyber integrity with a clean back-end team. Maria consulted on the new compliance chain. And Madeline? Gone. Off-grid by design, her testimony sealed, her debt paid. Ryan never contacted her again. He didn't need to. Some debts aren't emotional, just tactical. His days became simple. Early mornings, no press, no travel, no ego. He ran a small think tank under a blind LLC. Funded startups that built secure tech for underserved communities. Mentored 2 founders from the Midwest who reminded him of himself. Back before legacy, before betrayal. And on most evenings, he walked. No phone, no destination, just distance from what almost buried him. One night, he stopped by the riverfront. The same place he once stood before unleashing the final sequence against Jonathan. The city lights flickered. Calm, he pulled a thin notebook from his coat. Inside, a single entry. Final record, my brother taught me the price of trust, but also the value of silence. Not to hide, but to hear myself think again. He closed the book, didn't tear the page out. Some truths deserve to stay whole. At Adler Systems, a new employee orientation video played in a quiet room, cleanly produced, times fatust. No flash. The final slide read, "This company was founded in crisis, survived betrayal, and exists today because one man remembered who he was. No name, no applause. But Ryan's legacy moved through every fiber of the building, unspoken, permanent. In a private server, one folder remained untouched since the trial ended, reclaimed inside a single file. He thought I wouldn't wake up. Text. Last modified the day before Jonathan's conviction. Its contents. He thought I wouldn't wake up. He thought I wouldn't remember. He thought I'd stay silent. But silence was never surrender. It was just strategy. Ryan never opened that file again. He didn't need to. The war was over. The aftermath belonged to peace. They took his name, tried to erase it, tried to wear it like a suit made of lies. But Ryan didn't fight to be seen again. He fought to become whole, without needing to be watched. And in that silence, he rebuilt something no one could take.